Ross, did you want to clarify anything from last week about ages, or do you just want to go through it again, real simple, like to reaffirm the proper ages to transfer pistols, rifles, whatever?
Well, we spoke about transferring weapons, and we talked about there being no real minimum age limit. The problem is making sure that once the gun is transferred, that you don't get in trouble, or during the transfer that you don't get in trouble. And so, because we talked about you can do private sales.
Can you clarify what you just said based on the state and the Fed way of doing things? Because I'm assuming what you just said, you could be any age, that's the state, but when you go to buy it from a federally licensed dealer,
So yeah. If you're licensed, you wouldn't be able to sell firearms in general, like the shotgun, the rifle, stuff like that. You wouldn't be able to sell those until a person was 18 years old. You wouldn't be able to sell them pistols until they're 21 years of age. Okay, and in some states it's as high as 25.
but
Okay,
they make it seem though like it's this big loophole or this big illegal thing now that if you sell a gun to somebody and it's not being done in a federal way, that they're criminals. That's the impression I get because what you told us last week, I never knew. So here it is. It's like somebody spun it and it got out of control, and you're putting clarity on it. And there's a certain way you have to do it. So explain now the way you would have to do it.
so if you're younger than the 18 years of age and you're trying to buy a firearm, you would have to do that by private sale. Okay, and that would have to be, that would be if you're going to transfer some kind of weapon to your niece or nephew, or even your friend's son or something to that effect. You're gonna transfer it either through a gift or a sale. And we talked about the state laws that would actually control in the event of a private sale in that kind of case. And for that kind of case, if that individual, okay, is a minor, they're going to have to be able to, you're going to have to get the consent. In my opinion is anytime that they're under 18, is to just to get written consent from the parent, no matter what. Now, if it's a gift, you technically don't have to have, right, the written consent. You only have to have consent. But I'm telling you, don't ever do that. That's a dangerous situation. Just go ahead and get the parents to sign off on the receipt.
Let me get extreme on a scenario or a question to you. You get this gun. Let's say it's a 14-year-old, and he's got the written paperwork that you just talked about. Can he walk down the street with an AR-15 strapped to his shoulder in a normal manner that doesn't pose a threatening as compared to like holding it in both hands at the ready? Since I can, as an adult, do that, I can walk down the street with my AR-15 if I want to, as long as it doesn't look like it's in a threatening manner. But now that you said that a young person like that,
There's no statute saying that they can't possess that weapon.
but you would agree people are going to freak.
Probably.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'm not worried about the freak part. I want to understand the law first. Then we
But
can, of
you're
course,
gonna
use
have this.
great
You're gonna
judgment.
have this problem because this code, right? The statute's gonna say that, and it's under 17. So any person that's 16 years of age or older that has access to a readily dischargeable firearm, okay, is going to be able to get you in trouble as the person who allowed that access.
Okay.
So it's a catch-22.
Catch-22.
Right? There's nothing that says that
They can't own. They can own it.
that
but
youngster
they
can't go walking down the street and stuff like that. But is it readily dischargeable? Because if it is, the person who made that gun
That's right.
accessible to that individual is going to have a problem.
Yeah. So that's why I always want clarity, because I don't want somebody to take a nugget and say, "Well, they said this." Well, no, you got to eat the whole meal. You can't just take a little piece of it. You got to understand how it all works around. So the 14-year-old can have access to the firearm. It can be transferred. He can have legal ownership of it, but he just can't have possession of it without the accompaniment of a adult parent or guardian, right?
Right.
Okay.
And we talked about there may be some exceptions to that rule, even if it's for the farming
Right.
type agricultural type purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But if they are going to go hunting,
Self-defense.
if they're going to go hunting, you're going to have adult supervision unless you get unless you're falling under the agricultural.
Like working a trailer, a tractor, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of snakes. And
Yeah, and you pull out the shotgun.
Okay.
I mean, that's going to be a situation where I think supervision is not going to be necessary. But in all the other cases, there's going to need to be supervision.
That's very good. Ladies and gentlemen, the number here is 254-697-6633. Give us a call if you got a question, comment, or if you did the shoot last night and want to make a comment about that too. That'd be a great little topic to talk about as well. Okay. I think that pretty much clears it up.
Well, we talked about in segue to that we spoke about going into putting things into trust, making sure that if you were to die, that they would be left in such a way that people wouldn't get in trouble, and that they would know what to do in the event of your death. And like, let's say, for instance, that you wanted your wife to have the firearms, okay, or even a better example I've actually done before is, let's say that your son's on felony probation, okay, and has got a conviction, and so you want him to have the guns, but he definitely can't have the guns right now, and sure can't have the guns for another 5 years. And let's say for some reason it was a bad case, right? But you think he's getting his life together. It was a 10-year probation deal. So you might be looking at a minimum of 15 years before he could even have guns in the house. And so it's possible during that 15-year period you could die, you could pass away, okay? But even if he can't get them back, you definitely want them to go right to your grandchildren, okay? But you also have a wife that's alive and well, and so how do you make sure that you transfer these assets in such a way that you can make sure that your grandparents, because let's say you have your great granddad's, double barrel shotgun or single load shotgun from the early 1900s or something to that effect, that you want to make sure you keep in the family. And so you could do that easily. I think you could try to do that through a will. I would think the easiest way to do that would be through a trust. Okay, and we talked about, you asked me, I talk about the trust plans when we have to have licensing, such as when we make a silencer, and you have to have federal licensing. Mm-hmm. But we want more than one person to be able to use this. You have a trust created, right? And you have a trustee that designated as each one of the individuals that might be able to use this.
In translation, tell me if I'm wrong, the trust is the owner of the device.
Yeah, so a trust is nothing more than I explained it as
a human doesn't own it. It's the actual entity that owns it. You just have access to use it.
Right. So a trust is essentially an agreement. Okay, it's an agreement. But yes, I like to look at it. It is going to be an entity we're going to create. It's going to have its own social security number, so to speak. Right? We're going to create it. And I like to explain it as a box. Okay, or a trash can. Okay, and we throw all of our property into this box, into this trash can, and then you have an agreement between three people: the trustor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. And so it's the Holy Trinity. Okay, you've got your trustor, who is the person that creates it. They create the box, they make the box, and they're the ones who throw the property into it.
Okay.
After that aspect, it's essentially over for any activity on their part. Okay. Then you have the trustee. That's going to be the one who's in charge of management of the box and management of the property that's in the box.
So even the person who created it has to follow the rule of the trustee.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. And vice versa. The trustee is going to have some obligations that they promised to do for the trustor.
Got it.
Okay. And then you got the beneficiary, and that's for whose benefit that the box and the property is made. And if you do a revocable living trust, you will essentially be all three people, because you'll be the person who created, right, the box and throw the property in there. Then you'll be the person, the trustee, who's in charge of the property, okay, in the box, and you'll be the beneficiary, the ones who's benefiting from the actions of the other two.
I think that was a very clear illustration.
Okay, yeah.
In
and
my simple mind, I truly understood it very clearly. So that was pretty good. Hopefully everybody else out there understood it too. Because when you're watching Ross and you're seeing his hand movements, you get the visual aspect of it too. But in his words, his verbiage is very clear, I think.
I hope so. So I make the big bucks. I'm just saying. That's freaked out. That's an inside joke. Anyway, so we've got this trust, which is a box, or what we call an agreement between the Holy Trinity, the three main players. Okay, and they've each got to do something. And if certain circumstances happen, it governs. And that's why I'm saying, you could say that the circumstances in this case were that you wanted right now you're the beneficiary, but if you died, you wanted your son to step into your shoes and take control of these weapons. But if he's not off of probation, or if he's not been clean of felony for 5 years, okay, you want to make sure that it goes to your grandkids. Okay, and so if that circumstance has not transpired, then you know exactly what's going to happen when your weapons are going to go to your grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if there is no grandkids, right, in some situation, bad event, right, they're going to go to your wife, and your wife does whatever she wants to with them. Or you could give them to your wife.
Some guys are screaming, "Oh my gosh, no!"
Well, it's all really about your choice. It's not necessarily.
They're all afraid that the wife's gonna sell the gun for what the husband told them they paid for it. Isn't that the standing joke? Because they paid probably twice as much. Okay, sorry.
So yeah, you could also leave the weapons to your wife for her life. Okay. And that she could use them or be in control of them, be the trustee over them, and have benefit to use over her life, right? And then once she's gone, you could have the same circumstances. Either give it to your son if his scenario has changed, right, or goes to your grandkids in a certain situation. And if none of those events exist, none of those facts exist, you could give them to somebody else you want.
And that eliminates the chance of argument. Saying, "No, Dad gave me that one. No, he didn't. He gave me this one." So
exactly.
It's all written down. That eliminates the argument.
And so, and the good thing about the trust is you could have it, do things that say just a regular simple will can't do, because, like you said, it's an entity that is lasting. It doesn't you don't just quit, boom, and then all of a sudden go to probate, and then have your probate do one outright distribution. This thing can stay in an entity, okay, over time, and continue to develop and actually be transferred to this person and this person and this person, with you maintaining control and knowing what's exactly happening. And why is this important? Well, we talked about husband and wives and community property. Well, yes, an inheritance, when you get an inheritance, that's supposed to be separate property. Okay, but the income generated from separate property is community property. And once you commingle, right, once you commingle your separate property, okay, you're running into the presumption that it was a gift, right? In other words, that it was a gift to the other person. And when you make a gift to your spouse, that's not even community property. That's their separate property. Okay? You're running into problems that you may have made a gift to them, right? You're running into problems that you made a gift of half of your separate property to them, which is going to be half their separate property. You've made a gift, there's a presumption that it is community property. Okay? Because once you've commingled and you can't retrace, right, it's going to be presumed that separate property is now community property.
Key phrase: retrace. If you have a paper trail of some sort, you can back your way out of it. But if not, forget it.
Yeah, but the reality, you talked about being a realist, and how many times do I talk about I'm a realist? Mm-hmm. How often does that people make sure that they have this paper trail? And
Limited.
And they may have had that paper trail right in the first year or two once they do it, but we're talking over the course of a marriage that's maybe 10 years long. That's gonna, things are gonna happen. You're gonna change bank accounts. You're gonna move this money here. You're gonna buy this car with this money, right? Man, it was such a good looking car. Or your kid's gonna have some kind of emergency medical bill. There's gonna be something that comes up when you're gonna need to pull from some funds. The most common, I think, is probably buying a house together. Okay, and you're running into problems of the community's entitled to reimbursement. Okay, but the same thing happens. Right, when we talk about just assets in general. And so if you just give an outright distribution of money and a will, okay, or some other kind of asset, right, you're running the risk that individual that gets the outright distribution, right, is going to be subject to creditors, judgments, and what I like to call predators. And that's going to be what we call the ex-wives, okay, right, or the ex-husbands. Okay, they're going to be subject to predators who are going to try to take, right? Maybe a spoiled or undisciplined child even, right? Could want to come and take a portion of their money.
I'm getting static. If there's somebody you can check that.
It's just the
okay. All right.
speaker.
And so a trust, right? So a trust can essentially, you can have what we call an asset protection trust. Okay, and it can go into these trusts and it can protect those assets and make sure that they remain your child's or whoever you're giving them to. It can remain their separate property. Okay, so that they can't be attacked later.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And so, I mean, it's the same thing as you're transferring these properties. I mean, this is I think it's an important thing that people should really take into consideration when they're doing their estate plan, not just as far as who gets what, right? And you got to remember that 50%, right? We've talked about yours. 50% of your assets, in my opinion, are not just your tangible assets. They're your traditions, your values, your stories, the characteristics that you want to pass along in your children, like your opinion pieces, for example, right? Most people, you get to tell your opinion pieces, right? But you know, my grandmother, who has all these great stories about World War II, when her brother flew over Eastland, Texas, right, and dropped a parachute full of goods that he had gotten overseas, and a letter talking about how much he loved her, flying the plane Vita Vita Vic, okay, and never got to saw him again because he went down right over France. When she had so many of those stories, that those things just got left behind.
There's so many people I'd like to plug into a USB port in their brain and just download all those stories, man. It'd be so great.
Right, and so when you're doing your estate plan, make sure that you're also thinking about, right? We do what's called a legacy, right? Hour, sort of, not just an hour. Sometimes it's a lot more than that. But we can record you telling these stories, leaving these characteristics, leaving any audio or video recordings that you have, right, in sort of like a vault, okay? That so that if anything happens, those things are available for the rest of your family.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a very organized individual, and I've got my situation pretty organized when it comes to who gets what, firearms and all that. But I'm just very blessed to have a family that is not contentious and want to argue and fight about it, and they just accept it as it is. It can always go bad, but even with me being organized, I can see what Ross here is talking about, how vitally important it is to, if you're not organized and you can't do it yourself, to get somebody like Ross here to square your way.
No, but even if you're organized, so how are you going to make sure that your kids' assets are protected later?
That was my point. Even though I am organized, it can go bad. So even if you're organized out there, who I'm talking to, I'm saying you might want to consider doing that. It doesn't matter how good you are, getting it legally done is probably the better way to protect yourself.
Also, you got to think about, it's not necessarily about if something bad happens. I can show you statistics on this matter, but kids, people even older than me, so 40 and under, okay, are not getting the same kind of retirement plans and benefits that they once got. Those things are slowly dwindling away. The types of retirements and the value of those retirement plans are not near as what they used to be. And you may call in and say, well, I've got a good, you may have a good one individually. I'm speaking generally across the board, they don't. And so the likelihood of your children getting a good benefit package that will really take care of them, right, after an age that they want to retire, 60 to 70 years old, right, is highly unlikely. So when you're looking at the statistics now.
Is my boys are going to sell my guns, right?
that probably, or and that's the point. If you have,
I'll haunt you, I will haunt you.
And but if you have something that you can leave behind, right, you may want to do it in such a way. Let's say you have $250,000, okay. Even an IRA and a 401k and some kind of retirement plan, you got 2 kids. You don't just want to just give them $250 outright, right? Because you know that they're going to need that for later, okay? And so you can put that in a certain number of trusts. There's so many ways to do that, okay, that can make sure that they can take a little bit, right, throughout time, right, but they cannot take an outright distribution, and so that it's left for the end of their life, and also there's leftovers for your grandchildren to build off of, well, and that's what it takes to build a legacy. Yeah. Okay, and that's not just going through your financial advisor, because they cannot make these assets continually transfer from generation to generation.
Don't you think it's always a good idea to look at what your financial advisor is driving, the kind of clothes he wears, and the house he lives in? Because if he's driving some low-grade vehicle, and he's on the bad side of town in a rundown house, don't you think you would question, well, what's up with your finances, you know? So that's what I always look at. Or if you're going to get a job, look at the guy or gal who's been there for 20 years and see what their lifestyle is. Is that what you want? Wouldn't that be a good idea?
I mean, that's not. You surely don't want to muzzle the ox while he treads the grain. So
That's
you want to
right.
make sure that he gets paid too, and you want to make sure that you're getting somebody that's earning a profit. Okay, but how do you know that that person doesn't have other assets elsewhere?
I don't, but I'm just saying.
It's a good idea.
to check it out.
It's a good idea. You shouldn't just invest with anybody without checking out, right, who that person
That's
is
right.
for sure. Okay, and
It's just like me. People, I'm sure they've checked out all different instructors, and that's why they come to me.
hey,
Speaking of which, October 27th, I think. Check it out on my website. I'm sure I got it up by now. But we've got I'm setting up the last final seminar for 2018. I usually set certain dates within the course of the year. Well, this is the last date I'm setting for this year. And then, of course, we'll set them up for next year. So if you're interested in doing a self-defense home invasion seminar, contact me. Go to the website. Check it out. We can get you squared away. I pause. Go ahead.
oh, wait, how much time we got? What are we looking at?
We got about, 7 minutes.
No, you want to read the letter?
You go ahead and read it.
So there's been
I can't see that, so you read it.
So there's been a big push, right? And there was
Wait. One question, real quick. Make it a real fast answer. You said something about felons, and somebody just asked me about this. A felon with a really BS felony. In other words, it's no harm to nobody, no harm, no foul. Maybe he smoked a joint or something, okay?
In a school zone.
No big deal, right? But he can't have a firearm. Can he have a replica of anything 1896 and lower if it's cap and ball because it's not considered a weapon? And that's a great defense gun, too.
Yes.
Okay. Quick answer. If
It
you
was
need-
not a firearm.
They don't classify it as a firearm, but it'll blow you away because how many Civil War people got killed by a cat and ball pistol? So if you're one of those felons who got some bogus type of felony charge and you're lacking some type of self-defense weapon, you might want to check out the rules when it comes to black powder. Okay. Go ahead, read your story.
Well, no, because there was a big push recently, and I'm a big fan of Texas history, and I don't know about all the ins and outs of some of what they were proposing, so I probably shouldn't speak my opinion, but they definitely weren't wanting to teach on the William Barrett Travis letter anymore. They were wanting to cut this out for time reasons, also for it was just going back to the Starfish program, if you remember that, not the star test, excuse me, about the same kind of advocates that were saying that the United States founding fathers were traitors, even though they were traitors, I guess to an extent, but it wasn't in a positive way that they were wanting to teach, right, this curriculum. And so it's kind of been the same advocates, right, as far as Texas history was concerned. And I had already been an advocate. I didn't understand why we weren't teaching Texas history even more. And so these folks were wanting to actually cut Texas history out, teach less Texas history than they do today. And I just say, to paraphrase Mike Huckabee, he said some whack job in Texas wants to stop teaching the Alamo history. It's like, thank goodness,
you, man, we're getting more and more people from the coast coming here, and they're screwing this place up. That's what they're doing.
He said, thank goodness the Texas governor, did what he had to do to make sure this didn't go through. And so I just I was thankful for that, and in honor of us not getting too caught up in political correctness in school and just teaching it how it really happened.
That's it.
And what it really means to be a Texan. I'm going to read
There's a lot of snowflakes out there, man. They're getting upset over every little thing. Their panties get caught up in a wad. They get all sorts of things. They can't handle it. It just drives me nuts. But go ahead.
I know, and I think you met on the show a couple weeks ago. We had my buddy Tim. He's from California. We had him down just hanging out, and we took him down to the Alamo, and we took him through the Alamo and all the different little scenes that they had set up, and the different actors that they had on there to explain what they were, and his mouth was just wide open. I mean, people that don't, California's got a rich history and tradition too, especially when you talk about the 49ers and going from there, and then the railroad and the highways and things starting
and
over there.
then something happened. I don't know what, but
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's got such a rich history to and tradition, and they're appreciative of that. But Texas has got this spirit, okay, and that's richly within our traditional foundations of who we are.
It's called freedom.
And so, yes, there was some things that were crooked about setting Texas up. There was some reasons for land grabs, but the overall purpose of it really was to give us freedom. And if you don't believe me, we can talk about even today that some of our laws on the books in Texas are for instance, when they took Stephen F. Austin when he went down to Mexico and they held him right for months on end without telling him what he had been charged with, simply because he wanted to ask right about petitioning right for a certain colony. And so I mean, it's just ridiculous when you think about that happening to someone. He wasn't doing anything wrong, and yet was held against his will without even being told why, and only for any other reason, for political reasons. And so that was absolutely wrong and an abuse of power. And so yes, there were many things about why the Texans did what they did.
Go ahead.
But because of that, and we're running out of time, I'm going to read William Barrett Travis' letter from the February 24th of 1836. To the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots, I am besieged. By 1,000 or more of the Mexicans under Santa Anna, I have sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours and have not lost a man. The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion. Otherwise, the garrison are to be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I have answered the demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly from these walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. Then I call upon you in the name of liberty, of patriotism, and everything dear to the American character. Come to our aid with all dispatch. The enemy is receiving reinforcements daily and will no doubt increase to 3,000 or 4,000 in 4 or 5 days. If this cause neglected, I am determined to sustain myself as long as possible and die like a soldier who never forgot what is due his own honor and that of his country. Victory or death. William Barrett Travis, Lieutenant Colonel Commanding.
Dang. Was that awesome or what?
And
you don't hear that too often, do you?
So they don't want to teach this, and obviously there was a PS, there was an extra addition to that letter. If you're interested, you guys should go check it out. It's a really a great thing to teach your kids. I think that really gives them perspective about how things happened and how we got this great place called Texas.
Here's another thing too. I was talking about this with somebody. The masses of people on this planet in general would love to hang out with each other and have a good time. You got the handful of the people in charge of all these different countries and the political thought process that make it a mess for everybody. So when you have people like this, whether you are into the war or not, of whatever war it may be, don't take it out on the soldier. The soldier is there for honor most of the time. They're there to save their way of life, their families, their lands, the whole works. So when you see a soldier, airman, seaman, marine, whatever they call themselves, okay, you need to look at them a little different. And of course you're going to have some jerks in there, but hey, so what? They're willing to take a bullet for you. So give them a rigid salute, tell them thank you, and that goes for law enforcement as well, and our firefighters and all our first responders, people like that. It takes courageous people to do things like that. So, all right, that was very good. We're running out of time. Why don't you tell everybody how they get a hold of you, Ross?
Yeah, again, Rick Dodd, thank you for sponsoring the show. I appreciate being on here as a guest. And if you guys have any questions, we love advocating, spreading the news about firearms and other civil rights, civil liberties, things of that nature. So if you got a question about these things or what we talked about on the show, or even have a good topic for the next show, give me a call at 254-605-4140, 254-605-4140. Matt's giving his numbers out. You can call him too. But if you have a legal question too about what we talked about and need some more elucidation into the subject matter, you can give me an email at benton@watson.legal. That's benton@watson.legal. Just like I said, make sure you leave your phone number so I can call you back. We get a lot of those emails and I can't call them back. Or you can come see me, 105 East Main Street, or make an appointment. That's in Cameron, or make an appointment for Houston or College Station. So,
ladies and gentlemen, the show can't stay on the air without contributors and sponsors. So, Copley Dodd Krebs Law Firm is a major contributor, just like all of our other ones are. And we just want to thank them all. If you think you have a business that would fit well with this, or you just want to contribute, give me a call, make contact with me. We'd love to have some more sponsors. We have spots available, and it really, truly does help. So if you like what you're hearing on the radio, it only stays on the air by people like our sponsors who help keep the circle of life going, okay? Ross, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for being here. Trey, let's hold on the break. I want to try and stay on schedule, and I'm going to go right into topics of interest.